Rest in faith, because the future is not empty, and it is not uncertain. God is already there, long before you worried, long before you questioned, long before fear whispered its lies. God stepped into your tomorrow. Nothing that awaits you has taken him by surprise. What feels unknown to you is already known to him. What feels delayed is already ordered. When you rest in faith, you are not ignoring reality. You are acknowledging a higher reality where God reigns beyond time. Faith does not deny the challenges of life, but it refuses to let fear define them. Fear looks ahead and imagines loss, failure, and pain. Faith looks ahead and sees God standing in the future, holding what you need. When God is already there, provision is already prepared, strength is already assigned, grace is already sufficient. You are not walking into emptiness, you are walking into a place where God has already made room for you. So many struggle because they try to carry tomorrow's weight with today's strength. God never asked you to do that. He asked you to rest. Rest is not inactivity. Rest is trust. It is the quiet confidence that God is working even when you cannot see it. When you rest in faith, you release control and allow divine order to take over. You stop forcing outcomes and start trusting direction. Rest is the language of faith that says, God, I know you are ahead of me. There are moments when the future feels intimidating because you do not know how things will unfold, but faith reminds you that you do not need to know the details when you know the one who holds them. God does not reveal everything at once because faith grows in steps. Each step teaches trust. Each pause teaches surrender. Each waiting season teaches dependence. And through it all, God remains present in what lies ahead. You may feel unprepared for what is coming, but God never sends you where his presence has not already gone. He prepares the place before he prepares the person. He arranges opportunities before you arrive. He softens hearts before you speak. He makes a way before you ever see the path. What you call uncertainty, God calls preparation. What you call delay, God calls alignment. Resting in faith also means trusting God's timing. The future is not rushed in God's hands. He is never late, never early, always precise. What must happen tomorrow will happen when the time is right. Faith learns patience without losing expectation. It waits without anxiety. It trusts without demanding explanations. When you rest, you allow God to unfold the future according to divine wisdom, not human urgency. Even when the future includes challenges, God is still there. His presence does not promise the absence of difficulty, but it guarantees his guidance through it. You will not face anything alone. You will not walk without direction. You will not struggle without strength. God's presence in the future means that victory is already possible, peace is already available, and hope is already alive. So rest your heart, release your fear, let go of the need to control what you cannot see. Faith is not about knowing what will happen. It is about knowing who will be with you when it does. God is already standing in your tomorrow, waiting not to frighten you, but to lead you. And when you finally arrive at what you once feared, you will discover that God has been there all along, preparing it for your good. The future is not empty, because God has already stepped into it, long before fear ever tried to claim it. What feels unknown to the human mind is already familiar to God. Time does not restrict him, and uncertainty does not confuse him. While you stand in today wondering how tomorrow will unfold, God is already present there, fully aware, fully prepared, fully involved. Nothing ahead of you exists outside his knowledge or care. Every moment waiting for you has already been touched by his presence. The future may look unclear from where you stand, but it is not undefined in God's hands. What you call the unknown, God calls known. What you call unanswered, God calls arranged. Fear often comes from imagining a future without God in it. The mind fills the silence with worst-case scenarios and unanswered questions. But faith corrects that image by reminding the heart that God never sends you where he has not already gone. He does not follow you into the future, he leads you into it. His presence is not reactive, but intentional. Before the challenge appears, His grace is already assigned. Before the need arises, provision is already positioned. Before the door opens, the path is already secured. The future is not a void waiting to surprise you. It is a place already occupied by divine purpose. Many struggle because they believe the future must be figured out before it can be faced. God never asked you to understand tomorrow, only to trust Him today. Faith is not confidence in outcomes, but confidence in God's presence. When you know God is already there, you do not need to rush ahead with anxiety. You can walk forward with peace. The weight of tomorrow does not belong on today's shoulders. God holds what you cannot yet see. His presence removes the pressure to control what lies ahead. Trust replaces fear when you realize you are walking toward God, not away from safety. The future being filled with God's presence also means it is filled with divine intention. Nothing ahead of you is random. Moments that will seem ordinary are already assigned meaning. Conversations yet to happen already carry purpose. Opportunities waiting for you are not accidental, but arranged. God steps into the future to prepare what you will need when you arrive. He aligns people, circumstances, and timing with precision. Even delays are purposeful. Even detours are covered by His presence. The future is not a place of chaos, but a place of preparation. When God is already in the future, peace becomes possible in the present. You can rest not because everything is clear, but because someone trustworthy is ahead of you. Rest grows when fear loses its power to predict disaster. Faith sees the future not as a threat, but as a meeting place with God's faithfulness. Every step forward is a step toward His presence. Every unknown moment is already known by Him. This awareness shifts how you wait, how you decide, how you pray. The future stops feeling heavy and starts feeling held. Trust deepens when you realize that what awaits you has already been surrounded by God's care. Living with this awareness changes how you respond to uncertainty. Instead of resisting the future, you move toward it with surrender. You stop asking how everything will work and start trusting who is already working. God's presence ahead of you means you are never walking into emptiness. You are walking into divine attention, divine wisdom, divine timing. What you fear today loses its authority when you realize it must answer to God tomorrow. The future does not belong to chance or fear or confusion. It belongs to God who stands there already, waiting not to overwhelm you, but to guide you, to provide, to reveal, to carry you into what He has prepared. Rest is an act of trust, not a sign of weakness, because true rest is rooted in confidence in God rather than escape from responsibility. Many confuse rest with avoidance, but spiritual rest is a deliberate decision to stop striving and start trusting. It is the moment the heart releases its grip on outcomes and places them into God's hands. Rest declares that God is capable even when you are not. It acknowledges limits without fear. When you rest, you are not giving up, you are handing over control. This kind of rest requires faith because it goes against human instinct to worry, plan, and force results. Rest is the quiet strength of belief. It says that God's power does not depend on human pressure. Trust-driven rest silences the inner voice that demands constant action. The world teaches that value comes from effort, but faith teaches that strength comes from dependence. When the soul rests, it stops fighting battles it was never meant to fight. Anxiety often comes from carrying burdens meant for God alone. Rest allows those burdens to be released. In that release, peace begins to settle. The mind becomes still enough to hear direction. Rest creates clarity where noise once ruled. It replaces panic with perspective. Those who rest in faith discover that God works most powerfully when they stop forcing solutions. Trust invites divine intervention. Rest is also an act of humility because it admits that human understanding is limited. Pride insists on control, but faith surrenders it. When you rest, you accept that you do not need to know everything to move forward. Trust fills the gap between uncertainty and obedience. Rest protects the heart from burnout caused by constant striving. It restores strength, not through effort, but through reliance on God. Those who rest learn to wait without fear. Waiting becomes a posture of expectation rather than frustration. Trust reshapes how time is perceived. God's timing becomes more important than human urgency. When rest flows from trust, it transforms how challenges are faced. Problems no longer appear as threats, but as opportunities for God to act. Rest removes the pressure to solve everything immediately. It allows space for divine wisdom to guide decisions. Those who trust God's process do not rush outcomes. They remain calm while God works behind the scenes. Rest steadies emotions when circumstances fluctuate. Faith anchors the heart during uncertainty. This steadiness becomes a testimony of trust. Others notice the peace that accompanies a rested soul. That peace reflects confidence in God's presence and provision. Rest strengthens faith by reinforcing belief in God's character. Trust grows when you experience God's faithfulness in moments of surrender. Each time you rest, you witness how God carries what you release. This builds assurance that He is reliable. Rest teaches the soul to rely on God's strength rather than personal endurance. It shifts focus from self-effort to divine sufficiency. The heart learns that rest is not inactivity but alignment. Alignment with God's will produces stability. Stability produces confidence. Confidence produces peace. Rest becomes a lifestyle of trust rather than a temporary escape. The soul settles into assurance that God is in control, working, guiding, sustaining, even when nothing appears to be happening. Faith releases control and allows divine order to lead, because control is rooted in fear, while faith is rooted in trust. The need to control often comes from uncertainty and the desire for security. Faith, however, finds security in God rather than circumstances. When control is released, the heart stops wrestling with outcomes. Divine order begins where human interference ends. God does not need force to work, He needs surrender. Surrender creates space for divine alignment. When faith takes the lead, confusion gives way to clarity. The soul experiences relief when it no longer carries what God intends to manage. Trust becomes the foundation for peace. Releasing control is not passive resignation, but active confide. NCE in God's authority. It is the decision to believe that God knows what He is doing, even when the path is unclear. Control demands immediate answers, but faith accepts unfolding revelation. This acceptance quiets anxiety. Anxiety thrives where control is tight, but peace thrives where trust is deep. Divine order operates beyond human logic. It arranges events with precision that cannot be achieved by force. Faith allows this order to manifest naturally. Those who release control often witness unexpected alignment. What once felt chaotic begins to fall into place. God's timing reveals purpose in what seemed delayed. Divine order leads with wisdom rather than urgency. When faith steps back, God steps forward. He guides decisions without pressure. Divine order corrects misalignment gently rather than harshly. When control is released, resistance dissolves, the heart becomes flexible and receptive. Faith opens awareness to divine direction. Direction becomes clearer as noise fades. God's order simplifies what human effort complicates. The path forward becomes evident step by step. Faith trusts the next step, without demanding the full map. This trust allows movement without fear. Divine order leads with assurance rather than haste. Faith that releases control also transforms relationships and interactions. When control is present, relationships strain under expectation. When faith leads, grace replaces pressure. Divine order aligns people as well as circumstances. God connects hearts that support purpose. He removes distractions without struggle. Faith allows these shifts without resistance. Trust in divine order prevents manipulation. Relationships evolve naturally under God's guidance. Peace governs responses rather than emotion. Faith-led hearts respond with patience and understanding. Divine order preserves unity and purpose through alignment rather than force. When divine order leads, the soul rests in confidence rather than tension. Control exhausts, but faith restores. The release of control brings inner freedom. Freedom allows joy to return. Divine order stabilizes emotions during uncertainty. Faith anchors the heart when outcomes are delayed. Trust prevents overreaction to temporary setbacks. God's order ensures nothing is wasted. Even mistakes are redirected. Faith allows learning without condemnation. Divine order works all things together with intention. The heart becomes steady, grounded, and hopeful. Living under divine order reshapes perspective on success and failure. Control measures success by immediate results. Faith measures success by obedience and alignment. Divine order redefines progress. It values growth over speed. Faith celebrates movement even when outcomes are incomplete. Trust in divine order removes comparison. The soul focuses on its own path rather than others' journeys. God's leading becomes personal and purposeful. Faith sustains commitment through seasons of uncertainty. Divine order guides consistently, gently, and precisely. The heart remains open, receptive, and surrendered as faith continues to lead beyond understanding. God prepares tomorrow before you ever arrive, working ahead of you in ways the human mind cannot fully grasp. While you focus on the present moment, divine wisdom is already arranging what is ahead. Nothing you will face comes without preparation. Every need is anticipated. Every challenge is measured. God's preparation is not rushed or reactive. It is intentional and precise. What feels uncertain now has already been considered by Him. The future is not a sudden event, but a carefully prepared season. God does not wait for you to reach tomorrow to begin working. He steps ahead of you with purpose. Preparation often happens quietly and invisibly, beyond what the eyes can detect. God aligns circumstances, people, and timing long before they intersect with your life. What appears as coincidence is often coordination. Delays are sometimes part of preparation rather than obstruction. God strengthens you internally while arranging things externally. While you grow in patience, He prepares provision. While you develop faith, He secures opportunity. This unseen preparation requires trust. Faith believes in preparation even when there is no evidence. God's work in advance ensures stability when you arrive at what once felt unknown. God also prepares hearts before preparing events. Conversations you will have tomorrow are already influenced today. Doors that will open later are being positioned now. Resistance that could block progress is softened in advance. God prepares environments that will receive you. He removes obstacles that you may never see. Even opposition is managed within divine order. God's preparation includes protection as well as opportunity. You are shielded from what would harm purpose. This unseen guardianship allows you to move forward without fear. The future becomes less threatening when you realize it has been prepared. Preparation does not remove challenges, but it ensures provision within them. God does not promise ease, but He promises presence. He prepares strength equal to the assignment. When you arrive at a difficult moment, grace will already be there. Wisdom will meet you when decisions must be made. Courage will rise when fear tries to speak. God never sends you unprepared. His preparation ensures that nothing arrives without support. Faith allows you to trust this process. Trust grows when you look back and recognize past preparations. What once seemed overwhelming was already sustained by God. God's preparation also includes shaping you for what lies ahead. Experiences you did not understand at the time were forming. Capacity. Lessons learned in private seasons were building readiness. God prepares the person as much as the path. He develops character before responsibility. He strengthens roots before visibility. This preparation may feel slow, but it is essential. The future requires maturity as much as opportunity. God ensures you can carry what He prepares. This shaping protects you from collapse under pressure. Preparation becomes evident when you arrive ready for what once seemed impossible. Knowing God prepares tomorrow changes how you live today. Anxiety loses its authority when preparation is trusted. You stop rushing outcomes. You stop forcing doors. Faith becomes calm expectation. Peace replaces urgency. You learn to walk forward without fear. God's work ahead of you invites rest within you. Trust allows patience to grow. The present becomes lighter when the future is entrusted to God. Each step forward is taken with confidence. God's preparation assures you that what lies ahead has already been covered by His wisdom, His presence, His power. Fear fades when you know who stands in your future, because fear survives only where uncertainty is allowed to rule. When the future feels empty or threatening, fear fills the space with imagined outcomes. But when you know that God is already standing there, fear loses its authority. The future is no longer a dark unknown, but a place occupied by divine presence. Knowing who is ahead of you changes how you face what is before you. Fear depends on isolation, but faith reminds you that you are never alone. God's presence ahead of you reframes every possibility. What once looked intimidating becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes ordered. Awareness of God's presence weakens fear at its root. Fear often speaks the loudest when the future feels unpredictable. It magnifies what could go wrong and minimizes what could go right. But knowing God stands in your future restores balance. Faith does not deny risk, but it refuses to exaggerate it. God's presence brings perspective. It reminds the heart that nothing will arrive without purpose or permission. Fear thrives on unanswered questions, but faith rests in trusted authority. When you trust who stands ahead of you, you stop demanding to know every detail. The need for control decreases. Anxiety loosens its grip. The heart begins to breathe again. Confidence replaces panic when God's presence becomes the focus. Knowing who stands in your future also redefines danger. Fear sees danger as final, but faith sees it as temporary. God's presence does not promise absence of difficulty, but it guarantees guidance through it. When fear says you will not survive what is coming, faith responds with assurance of divine strength. God's presence ensures that nothing will overwhelm His purpose for you. Fear predicts loss, but faith anticipates growth. The future becomes a place of encounter rather than threat. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to experience God's faithfulness. Fear fades when the heart trusts God's ability to sustain, protect, and lead. Fear is also rooted in the belief that you must face tomorrow with today's strength. But knowing God stands in your future means strength will meet you there. You are not required to carry future burdens in the present. God assigns grace in the moment it is needed. When you understand this, pressure dissolves. Fear no longer demands preparation for every possible outcome. Faith trusts God's timing. Strength arrives with the season. Wisdom arrives with the decision. Courage rises when the step is required. Fear weakens when it realizes it cannot outrun God's provision. When you know who stands in your future, your response to uncertainty changes. You stop resisting what you cannot control. You stop fighting tomorrow before it arrives. Faith allows you to move forward without dread. God's presence ahead of you transforms waiting into expectancy. The future stops feeling hostile and starts feeling intentional. Fear loses influence when trust grows. The heart becomes steady. The mind becomes quiet. Decisions become clearer. Confidence builds not from certainty of outcomes, but from certainty of God's presence. Living with the awareness that God stands in your future reshapes how you live today. Fear no longer dictates choices. Faith becomes the guiding force. You move with peace rather than panic. Hope replaces hesitation. Trust strengthens resolve. The future is no longer something to survive, but something to step into. Knowing God is already there removes the fear of arrival. The heart rests in assurance. The soul remains anchored. The journey forward becomes one of confidence rather than dread. Fear fades naturally when the presence of God becomes greater than the unknown that lies ahead. Waiting in faith aligns you with God's perfect timing, because faith understands that timing is as important as direction. Many know where they want to go, but struggle with when to move. Faith teaches the heart to respect divine timing without frustration. Waiting is not wasted time when it is guided by trust. God's timing operates with precision beyond human awareness. What feels slow to you is often exact in God's plan. Faith keeps the heart steady while time unfolds. It resists the urge to rush outcomes. Waiting in faith allows God to prepare what is needed. Alignment begins when impatience ends. Faith-filled waiting reshapes how the soul experiences delay. Delay is no longer interpreted as rejection or failure. Instead, it becomes part of preparation. God uses waiting seasons to strengthen character and deepen trust. While you wait, understanding grows quietly. Waiting reveals motives and refines intentions. It exposes areas where control still exists. Faith surrenders these areas gradually. Alignment happens as the heart learns to trust timing over urgency. God's perfect timing protects you from premature decisions. Waiting becomes a place of safety rather than struggle. Waiting in faith also positions you to recognize the right moment when it arrives. Those who rush often miss divine signals. Faith sharpens discernment. It teaches patience without passivity. While waiting, the heart remains alert and responsive. God often speaks softly about timing. Faith learns to listen rather than force. When the moment comes, there is clarity rather than confusion. Peace confirms movement. The right timing carries ease even when the step is challenging. Alignment ensures that effort meets opportunity at the right moment. God's perfect timing includes preparation of people and circumstances beyond your control. While you wait, God works ahead of you. Hearts are softened, doors are positioned, resistance is reduced. Waiting allows these unseen adjustments to take place. Faith trusts that God is coordinating what you cannot influence. When timing is right, things align naturally. Less effort is required. Struggle decreases. Waiting protects you from unnecessary conflict. Alignment through waiting ensures that when you move, the environment is ready to receive you. Waiting in faith also strengthens emotional stability. Impatience creates anxiety, but faith produces peace. Peace allows you to remain grounded during uncertainty. God's timing guards the heart from disappointment. NT caused by unrealistic expectations. Faith learns to accept that some things must mature before they manifest. Waiting builds endurance. Endurance produces confidence in God's faithfulness. Each season of waiting reinforces trust. The heart becomes less reactive. Alignment grows as emotional responses come under faith rather than fear. Waiting aligns you with God's perfect timing by teaching surrender. Surrender removes pressure to perform or prove. Faith understands that what is meant for you cannot be missed. God's timing ensures arrival without loss. Waiting trains the soul to rely on God's wisdom. It shifts focus from results to relationship. Relationship deepens trust. Trust stabilizes hope. Hope sustains patience. Alignment becomes natural rather than forced. The soul rests while remaining expectant. Waiting becomes active faith rather than passive delay. God's timing unfolds with purpose, precision, and care, drawing you into the right place at the right moment with confidence and peace.